Welcome to Imprint, a podcast about creating a home and life you love. I'm Natalie Walton, an interior designer, stylist, and best-selling author focused on an holistic approach to homes. Each week, I'm sharing insights and interviews about the creative process to help you enhance both your interiors and well-being, as well as provide you with the tools and resources to make considered and sustainable choices with all that you create.
Hello everyone, welcome to Imprint. Well, I never thought I would be recording this episode with you, but as events have evolved over the past 6 months, and certainly more recently, I really wanted to take this opportunity to share the next iteration of Imprint House. And this is a business that I started almost 9 years ago. I birthed it almost quite literally alongside birthing my 8-year-old son, who's going to be turning 9 in May this year. And, it's been such a personal project. But as I share in this interview with Zena Hosseini, who is now the new custodian of this business, as I shared to her, it really has felt a lot like you build a house from scratch and you put your heart and soul into it and you love it. And one day though, you kind of think, you know what, we're ready for a new chapter as a family. And so you list the house for sale and you find some new owners and you sign the contract and you think, oh, I hope that they love this house, or in this case, this business, as much as what we have. And you really you recognize that it's a bit of a bittersweet moment of letting go of, your past and a huge part of your identity, but you're also excited for that next chapter. And you're also kind of looking forward to seeing, how that next chapter evolves for them as well. And so that is one of the ideas that we get into. I also wanted to get Zena to share with you, for those of you who have ever considered buying a business, or maybe you've never considered and you're kind of curious, like, oh, I didn't really know that you could buy businesses and what's involved in that process. She also shares that with you as well. I hope that you're going to enjoy this episode as much as what I did speaking with Zena. And I hope that you also welcome her as the new owner of Imprint House into your world and really continue to support and encourage her, because she is very much in alignment with the values that we established as part of Imprint House, and look forward to sharing her vision for the future as well. So please enjoy my conversation with Zena Hosseini. Hi, Zena. Welcome to the podcast. I am so excited to have you join and share what has been happening behind the scenes, because, it's very rare actually that I have heard of somebody sell a business and actually share the journey and, and really share who the kind of new custodian is. And I thought it would be really interesting, hopefully, to people who are listeners of the podcast to, get to know you a little bit better, and also get to people who have, been following along the journey of Imprint House for many years now, get to see what this new chapter is going to look like. Now, before we get into all the nitty gritty, I always like to start at the beginning and get a little bit of a sense of you and who you are, your background, where you grew up. I'm always interested in hearing, like what type of home did you grow up in, and what those threads throughout your life have had on who you are today. So please introduce yourself and share a little bit about your story, I guess until the age of deciding what you want to do when you leave school.
Hi, Natalie, and I'm so excited to be here as well. Thank you for having me. So I grew up, I was born into a multicultural family. My mom's Filipino, my dad's from Iran, and they met at university, and I was their first child, and they moved to Iran in 1982, 3 months before I was born, where Iran was in the war with Iraq. So that's the situation I was born into. My parents were both the first I guess, people in their respective families to have a degree and be professionals. And they had great careers that took them traveling all over the world. So, and, whenever they could, they took us kids with them. So my childhood was very much traveling. And every time we traveled, we went to different museums, looked at historical places, and always looked for decorative items that we could bring home. And the other thing we did as well, we moved a lot. In the 18, 19 years that I was living with my parents, I think we moved about 10 times. So we were always, that was my favorite thing to do with my mum, either decorating or redecorating. And it was something that has sort of stuck with me throughout my life. And then, and also art. I was we had a neighbor actually who was a very well-known artist. And that's how I started. She had a child that was my age, and I would go and hang out with them. And from the very beginning, she started teaching me, how to paint watercolors and oil paintings. And then my mum saw my interest and sent me to an atelier, we call it, where, artists work with students, and you go through very rigid structured training. You begin with your pencils and charcoals. And so I went through that, and, I had my first exhibition when I was like 7 years old, when I finally did an oil painting, because I had worked so much towards that. But then every time I thought I was going to be an artist from the very beginning. But then every time that conversation came up about art or practicality, the advice was always to move towards practicality. Here you are, a girl from the Middle East in the 80s. Really, life is hard as it is. You don't need to add another layer to it. So, and so I chose art every time. I chose business, and when I was about 19, I moved to Australia on my own to study, and I came to Brisbane. I did a diploma of hotel management to begin with, and then moved to the Gold Coast and did a bachelor in management, and then, went on to do a master's of commerce. And that every time, the challenge or the decision point between, creativity and business came through, I chose business, unfortunately. And I found that I was not happy. And so my career took a lot of different twists and turns. For a while, I was, I worked in hotels, and then I managed an interiors business. I managed a rug shop for a few years, became a business banker, for a few years after I did my economics degree. That's what you do. I thought, you have a degree in economics, you work in a bank. And I found, unfortunately, that was not really aligned with my values. And that's why when I realized I was a really values-driven person as well. So decided at the time, I was on a board of a non-for-profit, and I was really enjoying that. So I decided, I want to get into the non-for-profit world. So I pivoted, and I spent the past 15 years there and worked myself up. My last, I guess, position before Imprint House I was head of business operations for a digital inclusion charity, a national digital inclusion charity. So that was the career path I took. In the meantime, I did a diploma in kinesiology, had a, practice there for a while here in Brisbane and in Melbourne. And then I moved to Melbourne for a while, and in my early 30s. And then decided this is the time I can do my art degree, because VCA, and University of Melbourne. And I got in, and I spent a year doing a postgraduate degree there as a visual artist. And then I also, to my very great disappointment, I discovered that the art world wasn't for me, the whole gallery system. So it was a lot of, I guess, ups and downs and twists and turns to sort of reconcile. I came to a point where I understood that I could reconcile this, great desire for art and, this mind for business. And it doesn't have to be an either or, So that's where it got to the point where I finally had a moment of I want to have a homeware brand. It was a very specific moment. I remember we were in the middle of pandemic in Melbourne. We were locked in, and I had gone through a deep dive into, who I am and what am I about, and that's the realization. But it took again a few years, I think, until I had my daughter, that I realized, and I was reflecting on the type of mother I want to be, that I realized I couldn't genuinely tell her to follow her passion and find her talent and follow her heart if I wasn't demonstrating that. And that's when it became really serious. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about, I need to be able to, live and do what I preach, yeah, that was the story until we got to the place where, and then I started looking at, okay, I want to have a homeware brand and I'm an artist. So let me start making things. I looked at different materials. I looked at different processes and different business models. I was assessing scalability. Can I scale this? Can I, successfully make it work? If I make something, then how much of my time can I spend running a business? A whole heap of questions that you ask yourself. And everywhere I guess looked, I came to dead ends. And it wasn't until I think last year where suddenly my husband and I were talking and we had a moment of, we can buy a business. It was a very specific moment. And that's when we started actually looking, and not just looking, but we had to become really clear about our criteria for buying a business. So yeah, would you like me to go further into all of that?
Well, no, I just want to sort of, I guess, touch on a few things you say, because I think a lot of people can resonate with those. And, this idea of, and I hear it over and over again, where people, they follow a particular path that feels, in inverted commas, like the right path. And they follow this journey of, doing the sensible thing or doing the practical thing. And yet they constantly have this, little kind of, I kind of call it a whisper within, like there's this thing within you that just keeps saying like, but what about this? What about that idea? What about that thing that you really wanted to do? Like, what's happening with that? And I think also, talking about your daughter and that moment, and I know I've had that with different things as well, whereby with my own children, it's like that classic idea, isn't it? That like children do as you do, not as you say. And so you can say, follow your heart, follow your passion. But if you're not doing that, then they're going to do what you do. They do that in so many different arenas, and career and how you live your life. They are definitely ones that are true of that. And so, yeah, it's interesting to hear that. And that's why I love hearing about people's stories, because I think that sometimes when we're on that journey, we can feel like, oh, like everyone's got it figured out and I don't have it figured out. And when am I going to have it figured out? And, all of these things that can come up for us. And yet, I think it's so reassuring to hear that other people are on this journey too. And that I think as well, like we come to it, sometimes we don't always believe this, or like we wish it would happen earlier, but we come to it in a point in our life. I'd be curious to know if this is true for you as well. It's like, this is actually the right time. If I'd done this earlier, then maybe it wouldn't have worked out the way that what I can bring to it now. Like if you had maybe tried to do this, 10 years ago, maybe you would have had a very different experience, but now you've got all this business experience and, you're in a different position. So curious about that for you. And then I guess also this idea of once you had that moment of thinking, oh, well, we could buy a business. Tell me a little bit about that process of then looking at, okay, well, how are we going to filter these different businesses that are out there? What are the ones that are right for us? And what were your kind of criteria, I guess?
Yeah. Look, you're right. When I was, all those years and ups and downs and turnarounds, I think I was always frustrated by why I couldn't find a path forward. Now looking back, I can see that every single thing that happened was learnings that now equip me with the information, the skill, knowledge, wisdom that I need to successfully move forward. So at the time, it was very hard, but now I am so grateful for this, windy path that I've come through. Regarding your next question about what we did, look, we're list makers. My husband and I, we have lists for everything. And once we had that idea, we started making a very clear list of what we were looking for. And, it didn't take a long time because I suppose, we had a good few years of, I guess, the entire process of me assessing materiality, assessing business models, and doing research really came to a head where by the time we got to that place of, we can buy a business, I knew, and I just had to put that down. And I guess, so we were very clear that it needed to be within our budget. We needed to be able to comfortably afford it and not put ourselves in a financial strain from the very get-go. I needed to feel secure, and I feel like so many times the flight or fright, or this sort of this puts us in a disadvantage. I needed to feel like I am feeling very comfortable to be able to make best decisions, So that was the first point. And then it had to, the business had to have very good, I guess, a good brand. Like if people, you could look at it and feel like it was honest. There was alignment of values. The product had to be something that I could, we could sort of stand behind it and say, we're proud of this product, or what we're trying to offer to our customers. We needed to feel like, yes, the business was profitable or, had the potential to be profitable, but also that we could add value, that it was something that I could look at and say, all right, I can see they've done really great work here, but if I bring my expertise and my skills in these areas, we can take it to the next level. So it had to be, a certain list size, or so there were these criteria that we put together, and it had to be a business model that I was comfortable with. It had to be in this decor, homewares section. I have no idea how to run a bakery, for example, right? So it had to be in this sphere. So I felt like, it was something that I could really pour my passion into and really understood how I can move this forward. I knew, I've been observing the trends. I've been I've been a sort of a spectator for a very, very long time. And now I felt like I needed to comfortably step into a different position, and be an active contributor. So all of those things came into play. We then, went and put our, as you do when you're, for example, looking for real estate, we started looking at a few different resources out there that list businesses. So, and we just assessed quickly because we had these very clear criteria. It was very easy as you're going through, and, my background in business, it was very easy to sort of quickly assess whether that was going to meet our needs or our requirements or not. And I think what I would say is also we were prepared to, we were very clear that we didn't want to get emotionally attached until we knew a lot more. So we sort of went in with that lens to not get, and be prepared to walk away if what we found wasn't what we thought we saw. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I'm actually curious. Sorry, I was going to ask you, did you kind of come across some businesses like because I haven't asked you this question, when you were looking, where you were like, I can't believe that people are trying to sell that, or I don't know, there were some crazy things, or was there actually not that many things, or there were more businesses for sale than you thought, or like, you know what I mean? Like, were there some little unexpected things when you were starting to look at a range of different businesses? And had you been looking for very long? Like, was it a long process?
No, it wasn't a long process at all, to be honest. I think I started looking at businesses around end of June, and within 2 weeks, I think we found one or two other businesses that we looked at that we thought, oh, that's interesting. We had conversations and we started our due diligence process. And, we got into negotiations and we found that it wasn't, we uncovered a few things that weren't really right for us. And yes, in that process, we also thought, oh, we can't believe they're asking for this amount, considering what they're selling, or we can't believe they're selling, or they're wanting to sell this business without any documentation. They expect us to just believe what they're saying, or we had some funny moments actually. And so yes, but I think by the time we came across Imprint House, it was only, we'd done due diligence on a couple of other businesses, and it was quite quick. I thought we would have to sort of look for a very long time, but the stars aligned. It was just one of those things that when we first saw it, one of those things that you think, I can't believe this. If I had to put everything down on paper and imagine it, I could have never imagined it. And then suddenly it comes in front of you and you think, oh, of course, this is perfect. But again, we were still, as I said, cautious, because we were still very adamant that we don't want to get very emotionally invested before we, logically look at things. But I say that, but also if we weren't, emotionally attracted, there is, no matter what you say, there's almost always an emotional element to any purchase, right? And yeah, it just worked out. And I think we had a very long due diligence period. I think it was a few months, but it all worked out great. Lots of conversations, lots of digging and exploring and understanding and learning, which all came out great. I think everything we did during that period helped us really develop a strategy on how we could actually add value. Sometimes you look at something and you think, this is so perfect, I don't know how I would make it even better. But then you start looking and you start analyzing and you think, oh no, I know, I can see that, these little things I can do and tweak, and this is the value that I'll be adding to it. So look, it was a great process for us, but also we went in with the intention of being, very fair and collaborative and looking for a win-win. And we were so, I feel, lucky that we get, both you and Daniel were the same. I feel that sort of trust in saying that genuinity, and that alignment in values was a huge selling point for us, because we knew we didn't have to sort of, sometimes in the back of your mind you have things playing around, that we could relax about all of that and talk about how we could make this a beneficial sort of exchange for everyone involved.
No, it's definitely I can completely understand where you're coming from with that. And so I guess, like, what were some of the, I mean, you're talking about the values element, but what were some of, like, I guess, the core things about Imprint House as a business that really appealed to you?
Look,
what was it about the business that resonated?
Yeah,
I guess?
Look, firstly, the business was established. It had a verifiable history. It wasn't, there was great record keeping. When we read the profit and loss, it was so precise, detailed. It was just beautiful to look at, like everything else in the business. And we had seen, by that point, we had seen a few different profit and loss statements that were not. So to see that was just like, there was, as I said, there was an alignment in value. There was a emphasis on impact, and really caring about how we could have it was a family run business, that cared about people and the community, all of these things that were so important to us. It was that commitment. We could see the commitment to high quality products. And that was very important to us. We could see there was so much thought care and thoughtfulness and intentionality that was put into the business that all really resonated with us. And we felt that there was incredibly strong foundations in that way of, having strong values that we could sort of build on. Because I feel it would be very hard to sort of move a business if there is a lack of integrity or the values are not aligned. And then you have to do a lot of work to sort of turn that around. But all of these from the very beginning were sort of very visible in the business and palpable. It wasn't something we had to dig deep. It was all there to see. And it wasn't just also in words either. You could see it in action. So, the commitment to sustainability, the commitment to craftsmanship, these are important. Both my husband and I are artists, so it was important that we had we could see that there was this incredible sort of connecting the artists and the makers to the people, and these were all important things to us. It wasn't products that are mass produced in any way, so we felt genuinely that we could walk in and really feel proud, and be very, I guess, also continue on that great work, and feel like there was just alignments in every area. So that was it. We sort of we went and visited the showroom, and obviously beautiful space, very calm, well loved, and so much care in every detail that was just very, I guess, calming and very wholesome. And it's not, the word wholesome is not something that you would say a lot in business world, but it was. And for me, especially if I wanted to walk away from I guess the corporate setting, into a business world that I felt was in alignment with how I wanted to run a business. I wanted to make sure I could run my business in a feminine way. I wanted to make sure I could support other mothers, females, artists, and I could see myself being able to do all the things that I always dreamt of doing and having the impact that I wanted to be having through the business.
Yeah.
So it really sold itself.
Yeah. Oh, that's so lovely to hear. Thank you so much. That makes me feel so nice. And but as we were actually talking off mic before we started recording, and I was saying that really the experience of selling this business has really been very similar to building a house from the ground up and making it into your family home, and then you get to a point in your life where it's like, I love this house, but it's time for a new chapter. It's time for us to move. And you love your house. And so it's like this bittersweet parting because you love it and it's hard to let go, but you're also excited for the next chapter. And then also you have to let go in terms of, well, this family is going to come in and they're going to put their imprint on your house. I mean, it's funny because when we bought the house that we're currently in at the moment, there was a couple who'd been living here for 20 years and they were in their 80s when they sold it, and they were still really active, but they were just getting to that point where it's like 2 acres, and the husband, they kind of need to go into like a retirement village type place. And it was very well looked after, but me being me, I was like, I want to paint it, I want to do all these things. And not long after, they moved out and we moved in, she came back a few times because of like, she wanted to pick up some mail or do some things. And I felt so guilty, like that, we had painted the front and like we had made these changes because I didn't want her to get upset that like, oh, this is my house, like she had a very like, I call it a grandma garden, but a very traditional garden out the front, like with, I don't know, azaleas or something. And
Like I pulled all those, I don't know, put different plants in it, and and I felt so guilty. I almost didn't want her to come because I felt like, oh my gosh, like I don't want her to see the changes. But when she saw it, she was like, oh, this is so beautiful what you've done to it. Like, I love what you've done to the house, and that, you've made it your own. And so that's what it kind of feels like to me, selling this business, that, I love the business. I still do. Like, I love everything that we've created there. I've got so many happy memories, made so many connections and friends through the business. And at the same time, I'm kind of ready for this next chapter. And it's bittersweet. Like it's hard to let go sometimes, but I have to remind myself that, like this is life, and, we don't necessarily keep doing the same thing for the rest of our life, like, for 30 years or something. I mean, some people do, but I'm like you, I've moved a lot. It's not really my nature. And even like just having, and, like when I don't know, I'm sure I probably told you, but like the business was literally born when my 8-year-old son, who's about to turn 9, was born. So like there's a huge kind of connection there. So I say all this as a very long preamble to kind of say that obviously, with the change in ownership, the values that you appeal to you, no doubt will remain, but there will be changes. And I thought it would be really nice and, an opportunity for you to share how you think, like what you think is going to stay the same, how you see the business evolving, and how, you want to put your imprint on this business. So can you share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you mentioned that, because, it's always interesting to hear how it has been for you as well. And look, to be honest, I feel the same as well. I'm like, oh, I would love to keep it the same, but I also know that it needs to evolve, and I need to put my stamp on it. And it has been such a huge growth, I guess, thing for me to sort of really step into claiming, I guess my style, my aesthetic, what I want to bring in, but also keeping that balance. Like, look, as you said, my biggest thing at this point in time, I'm very hesitant to make huge amount of changes, because when you build a business, I'm sure you would know this, as your customer base grows, you get to know the customers, you get to really understand who you're serving, right? And as a person, I think one of the disadvantages of buying a business is that you don't have that, right? You walk into this business that's just thriving and gorgeous, but you don't know who's at the other end. So before making any changes, like we need to make changes. There was, contractually we need to change the name. So there will be, rebranding and change of name. But before I introduce anything else, I want to really get to know the customer. I really want to understand who loves this brand, what are they after, and how can we serve them better? I have obviously my own, interest. I'm very much interested in, I guess, the global sort of world as an inspiration. There's lots of, incredible artisans out there who bring a lot of their own cultural elements into an object. And, growing up in a home that had many, many different objects from places around the world, and as a child, I remember always thinking, I imagined that by touching an object, I could feel the person who made it, and sort of get a view, a glimpse into their world. So my own aesthetic and my own interest is very much in, in sort of finding beautiful pieces from around the world and bringing them, and offering them to our customers. But before we even start looking at that, I want to understand, who has been supporting us for all these years, and what is it that they love, so that I can understand what should we keep, and not change the things that are absolutely essential and important to the people, that sort of love this brand so much. So that's, I guess, at the moment, that's what my thinking is. I think, be spending a bit of time really connecting with our customers. I want to, see if we can, have a conversation and sort of understand all these different questions that I have before we make those sort of big decisions. In the meantime, look, the core collection will remain the core collection. And we're not changing that anytime soon until we sort of, and you've always had a timeless aesthetic, and we remain very committed to, a timeless, elevated, high quality artisanal sort of aesthetic and product range. So that's not going to change. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we'll see. We'll see what our customers tell us.
Yeah. No, it's going to be exciting. I'm really looking forward to seeing, like I said, how it evolves, how you put your imprint on it, and then the next chapter for the business. So wrapping up before we kind of go to the final questions that I always like to ask every guest on the podcast. You've maybe touched on this already, but is there one thing that you want customers to know about this new chapter for Imprint House?
Yes, and I have touched on it. We remain very committed to, the high quality artisanal handmade products. I strongly believe our homes are our source, are the places in which we grow, we, evolve, the place where, it's a very sort of sacred space for me, the home. And, we remain committed to simplifying the art of creating a beautiful home, and committed to, as I said, high quality products. I think I do have a vision for of us becoming, the trusted place for people to go to get bespoke artisanal objects for their homes. So, that commitment, I think, is the main sort of message that I want to send through, that we're not going to change to mass produce products, or in any way, change that sort of core of the brand.
Yeah. So nice to hear. All right, let's get into the final questions, which is always fun to hear and get an insight into a little bit more about you. So first of all, the first question is, which 5 words best describe you?
I always struggle with that. I think that
everyone does. Everyone does.
I'm sure you did. Look, I think intentional, driven, adventurous, very adventurous, thoughtful, and visionary.
What's one of the best lessons you've learned on your journey so far?
To care. I call it for myself radical care. To care about myself, care for my body, care for the people around you, the environment, the world. Just care. That's the biggest lesson.
What's one of your proudest achievements?
Look, achievement. I think I hesitate to call that achievement, but it's the thing that I'm most proud of, and that's becoming a mother. I came to this point in my life. I was 40 when I gave birth to my daughter. So, there was a long period there where I didn't think I wanted that for myself, but it has been the most incredible, proudest thing I've ever done in my life.
What's been one of your best decisions?
Moving to Melbourne in my early 30s.
Who inspires you?
My family, my parents, my siblings, my husband, my daughter. Like, every moment, I think, just they make me want to be a better person every moment. I have often thought, if I didn't have my siblings, or if I, they have, I would have been such a different person. They always inspire me to do better.
What are you passionate about?
Good design. And just thoughtful design.
What dream do you still want to fulfill?
Spending a lot more time with my father. He still lives in Iran, and we see each other every couple of years, and I just don't feel it's enough.
What are you reading? What's on your bedside table, on your coffee table? What book are you reading?
This incredible book called Chromarama, I'm looking at it right now, by this Italian graphic designer. He delves really deeply into history of color and how it has shaped our view of the world. It's a fascinating read.
Interesting. What are you listening to? Do you like to listen to podcasts? If so, which ones? Otherwise, music or audiobooks? What do you like to listen to?
Yeah, look, I do listen to audiobooks when I can, but usually when I'm listening, it's for, just to relax my mind. I'm into my electronic music. So I'm usually listening to, live sets recorded by my favorite artists on SoundCloud.
And finally, what piece of advice would you give to your younger self?
Keep dancing, keep enjoying sunrises. Everything will work out.
That's so good. Thank you, Zena. I am so grateful for you for taking the time to share a little bit more about you. I'm even more grateful that I feel like Imprint House is really in good and safe hands. That, for us, we didn't want to just sell it to anybody. We really wanted to sell it to people who had similar values to us, who were passionate, who were like-minded, who we felt like could really harness the potential of the business. We knew that it had so much potential, and that it was doing, like, it had the second best quarter, like 2 of its best quarters in a row, and we were certainly not selling it because it wasn't doing well or any of those things. It's like we could see it had a lot of potential, and we really thought we wanted somebody who could take that and run with it. And I think that we have found, the ideal buyer in both you and your husband, Alan John, as a partnership. I think that, it is going to be amazing to see how it grows and evolves. So very grateful to you both for taking it on, and we can't wait to see how it grows and evolves. And it will be like seeing a child grow and kind of go off to university and kind of go like, yes, go out into the world. And we wish you all the best of success. So thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And like I said, we can't wait to see what you create next.
Thank you. And thank you and Daniel for all the incredible work you have also done on the business so far. It is such a joy and such an incredible honor to actually be able to, take it on and know that it has such a good sort of reputation and so much care and love has gone into it. It is incredible. And for the beautiful process that we went to hand over, and that change of ownership it will always be a pleasant, lovely experience that I'm forever grateful for.
Thank you.
All of the links and info for this episode are at nataliewalton.com/podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so that you can get a direct download of the latest episode. And I really appreciate when you take a minute to rate and review, as well as share the love with someone you know who might benefit from this episode, or on social media. If you'd like to access a range of free resources, come visit my website, nataliewalton.com. Thank you to Jaeger Media for producing this podcast. And I would also like to acknowledge the people of the Bundjalung Nation where it was recorded, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I look forward to connecting again soon. I'm Natalie Walton, and you've been listening to Imprint.